thank you for coming today, and thank you for bringing me here to present the film. The film you're going to see was 90% shot in 2014, so already 5 years ago, and it came quite unexpectedly to me. When I was shooting the film, I was thinking that I'm just doing a research for something that will be a very long process, but then I met a young girl that became a main protagonist of the film you're going to see, and suddenly everything happened in a matter of couple of weeks. But it took me next 3 years to understand the material that I have shot, so the film had premiere 4 years after filming last year. So it lasts for 72 minutes, and I wish you a good screening, and I will be back here for all the questions after the film. Thank you very much.
Jednog dana mamu sam ja pitala, nisam još tada znala da se kaže Srpkinja. Mama, pa što sam ja Srbenka? I ja onako počela sam plakat, jer sam negdje do 7. godine smatrala da sam ja Hrvatica.
Možeš probati pjevat sad?
Moja sestra jednom došla doma i baš je napala tatu. Zašto si morao biti Srbin, znaš, ovo ono, ako ste već Srbi, mogli ste ići živjeti onda u Srbiju, zašto ste došli baš ovdje, znaš, to je bilo dosta traumatično, ja sam dijete od 8 godina i nemaš baš toliko shvatiti, ali shvataš to Srbin, ta riječ Srbin kao u nekom negativnoj konotaciji, znaš, u sklopu življenja u Hrvatskoj.
Uboje to vi sa novinama ovim, tvoji stavovi ovdje, koji bi moj trebao biti stav našao, malo sam pogubio, kužiš. I onda čitam na jednom dijelu gdje se spominje da nije rat počeo, Aleksandra ne bi bila mrtva. Što su Srbi jebeni počeli rat?
Možeš pička i materina!
Ti Frliću, ti nekrofilu. Samo ti možeš raditi predstavu o mrtvoj djevojčici, jesi nekrofil, jesi bolestan.
Ako vi nemate s tim problem i ne želite, ako ste tako superiorni, ja nisam.
A šta je sa hrvatskom djecom koja su ubijena? Šta je s njima? Kad ćemo mi raditi predstavu o hrvatskoj djeci koja su ubijena? U jedan dan u Slavonskom Brodu njih preko 20.
Sanjala sam da sam Aleksandra Zec i da sam imala sestru, da sam je ubila.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diana Jelica, and I am one of the programmers of BHFF. Welcome to the festival on my behalf as well. My co-programmer Amir Husak will join me up here in a second, and we will have a Q&A with the director, Nebojša Slijepčević. I think we need a conversation after this incredibly emotional and harrowing film. But I wanted to say a few things about Nebojša first. He was born in Zagreb in 1973. He obtained a degree in film and TV directing from the Zagreb Academy of Dramatic Arts. He made 35 episodes of the documentary TV series Direct, produced by Fade In. His documentary film in 4 years was awarded at film festivals in Sarajevo and Verona, and his documentary TV program City Folk was shown on a dozen of European TV stations. His feature-length documentary comedy Gangster of Love from 2013 about love stories in the 21st century was awarded at numerous film festivals in Croatia and abroad. And finally, Srbenka, which we just saw, was the winner of the Doc Alliance Award at the Cannes Film Festival last year, and perhaps more pertinently at the Sarajevo Film Festival last year. It won the Heart of Sarajevo for Best Documentary Film and also the Audience Award. So please welcome back to the stage Nebojša Slijepčević and my co-programmer Amir Husak. This film, as you may have noticed, is not in our official competition program because due to the propositions of our festival, it doesn't necessarily qualify. It's not a Bosnian co-production, but Amir and I, in our conversations about selecting this year's program, immediately agreed that we wanted to feature this film because, as we note in our programmer's notes, which you may have read on the website, we think it's one of the most important documentaries made in the region in the last decade or so, and its topic and its themes are pertinent for the region more broadly. Not just for Croatia. And to start us with, I just wanted to quickly read an excerpt from Variety's review of the film, which says, set against the backdrop of hate and xenophobic violence, Srbenka feels perfectly in tune with the current global moment. But Slijepčević admitted that he's been caught off guard by the emotional responses from viewers at foreign screenings. So we will get to that during our conversation. But Amir, you want to start us off with your question?
Sure. Thank you, Nebojša, for being here. Now, yesterday when we had this conversation about the film and just in current present state of things, you mentioned to me that you initially asked Oliver just to sort of observe the development of the play. You were interested in just watching the play and you were just filming a little bit. At that point, you did not have a film in mind at all. You didn't even think there would be a film. Can you speak about that a little bit and how that actually came about?
Yes. First, thank you again for bringing me here. I'm very happy that we have this conversation here now. So, when I heard that Oliver is preparing the theater play about Aleksandar Zec, I was at the very beginning of the process that I expected to last for years. I just, at that moment, I have decided that I will make a feature film that will deal with the topic with the young generation that was born in Croatia after the war has ended. So Croatian citizens who did not have any experience of war firsthand, and Croatian citizens who are of Serbian ethnicity. I wanted to make a documentary to actually to answer one question to myself: how do they feel in today's Croatia? Because my feeling was that although 20 years has passed since the Croatian war has ended, I'm talking about the time when I started working on this film, that still the things still in a public discourse, very often you could hear the word Serb in a negative context, you know, and for someone who is of Serbian ethnicity in Croatia, I thought it must have it must feel awful. So I asked myself, how is it to the families and how is it to the children who when they hear, I don't know, football hooligans or even some politicians using word Serb as something negative or as a synonym to the enemy. And but I expected that to be a very long process. So basically, the first thing in my research that I did was I contacted Oliver. I did not know him before. I asked him through a friend, actually my producer knew him very well. I asked her to invite him for a coffee, and so we had a long coffee, and we talked about what he does and what I wanted to do, and then at one moment it just came to me, and I asked him, okay, this is very inspiring to me. For me, can I come and watch how you work? So, and he said, yes, no problem, because he said one thing that I admire a lot. He said, I'm making my theater with the public money, with the public funding, so I think it's public has the right to know how I spend that money. So you're very welcome to my rehearsals.
And he was a resident director in Rijeka, right?
Yes,
right.
And no, actually, he was at that time, he was a guest director. The theater company that put this play on stage is very small. They don't have any actors. They don't have anyone who is on a permanent working for them. So they invited him to make a play, and then everything happened very fast. I came with my camera all alone because it was not filming, it was just researching. So I just, from my production company, I just took a little money to rent a small apartment in Rijeka for a month, and I was present at the rehearsals from the very first day, and you can see that in the film. Very first day of rehearsals, you can see this is the meeting all of them have around the table when they look at these press cuts and this. And at that meeting, there were also these 4 girls and their mothers present. But at that moment, I noticed them, of course, but I didn't find them so interesting. I had no idea that the film will be there. And I basically did not film them at all at this first scene. I had one shot that did not end in the film. But then when we came back the second day of rehearsals, I heard the rumor in theater that one of these 4 girls had a horrible nightmare after this first meeting when she saw these pictures. And then I talked first to Nina. I found out this Nina. Then I talked to her mother, and I decided, okay, I will start following Nina to see what will happen. And this nightmare you hear in film as well. This is somewhere in the middle of the film. You hear her speaking about her nightmare. And very soon happened that when I started paying attention to Nina, suddenly I could not film anything else, because whenever she was in a rehearsal, there was such a strong emotion on her face that I actually ignored everybody else in the room at the moment and just concentrated on her. And then came the most important shot in the film and most important rehearsal, and this is somewhere 2/3 into the film when the girls are asked for the first time to disclose their ethnicity, their nationality. And then there is the shot that is, for me, the most important shot of the film. Everybody are talking about that rehearsal, but camera stays on Nina's face, and you see that she bites her lips, and then Marin Blažević, who was dramaturgist of a theater play, finally notices that Nina is struggling, and he asks her, what's the problem? And when I got that shot, I knew, okay, now I have a film. This is not research anymore. This is not trailer. This is the whole film.
And then the final scene, the final few scenes. Yeah, that was the premiere of.
Well, the film is, in the editing, we connected a lot of things, So most of the rehearsals were shot with one camera. So of course, when you have cutaways, so it's not like it's just the editing. But the last scene was partially connected from the shots from the premiere and from the shots from the other. But the very last scene, when she walks away from the camera, it was shot after the premiere of the theater play. And this is like also the shot that for me is the most important shot in the film, both because this is the only shot in the whole film that's not filmed from the tripod, but from it's a handheld camera, which is for me very important emotionally. And also this is the only shot where I directly instructed Nina what to do. This is like a director's commentary of the film. But I think I stayed within her character in this scene, so it's not like provoking her to do something that for me when the premiere ended and I was waiting, actually on the night of premiere I was not in the theater room. I was waiting outside with my camera to get the ending, to see how they will react when they come out of the... And I could not be in a room because I couldn't go out. So the play ended, and you see this in the film. They exited on this back door, and 3 girls were very euphoric because it was the best night of their life, and because it was the big night with all the audience. And the 4th girl, Nina, was it was obvious on her that she's still she did not solve anything, So, and then I looked in a moment how to show that on the screen, and then I asked her to run away from camera.
And so the second time that scene occurs, after the first time being instructed that she doesn't have to say what her nationality is, in effect doesn't have to out herself if she has concerns. there's the second time that scene occurs, ostensibly. I think it's in front of the audience. There's this long, pregnant silence, and so much is reflected on her face. And finally, we hear she's a Serb. But like you said, it doesn't necessarily resolve anything for her because it might be just the beginning of more issues. But what I find incredibly important there is that it ties, this is a play about something that's happened in the past, but also its ongoing relevance because it's been buried under the surface today. And then through this child, we see these effects really viscerally in today's contemporary Croatia. So this is not something that's in the past. So this is what is unearthed, which I think is really important. And this brings me to my next question. When we talked yesterday, you said that you specifically wanted to make this a national film. So you didn't look for external funding. You wanted it to be a Croatian film.
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's very important to make local films. Because film industry forces you to make international films because it's first easier to finance in Europe, especially where we depend on national film funds, but the whole system is made in a way that you cannot get enough money from your national film funds. So you're forced in a way to make co-productions, and this is a very conscious system that is created by European Union because in that way they want to create a pan-European identity. And I have nothing against that. It's okay for me, but also I think it is very important that we make some films that are very local, that are for a local audience, that are not necessarily understood in any other country. And sometimes it's important to make a film with a local funding, only with local funding. And this film is one of such films that we could probably get some money from Serbia for this film. But we did not want that because my opinion is that films like this are of national interest for Croatia, and it should be done with Croatian money for several reasons, and not the least important reasons is we didn't want to give anyone chance to disqualify this film by saying, okay, this is Serbian propaganda and is paid with Serbian money. And also in the editing, we did not explain a lot. We didn't want to explain it in a way this film is made for someone who has some prior knowledge of what happened in Balkans. So I must say I was quite surprised. That's what I said to Variety as well when I discovered that this film travels so well around the world, and it does actually. It's everywhere. But yeah, I think it says a lot about the present moment in the whole globe.
And that's, you really just set up the question that I had, and because things have really changed even since shooting this film. Not that things were much better back then, but marginally better, we could say, specifically when we're thinking about the rise of nationalisms, different kinds of like populist and fascist movements really kind of emerging throughout. When the play was happening, when you were shooting, there was obviously a lot of backlash. We see the protests also. Oliver Frljić was receiving multiple threats at that time. Eventually, he also left Croatia. He's based in Berlin right now, due to these pressures and the political climate unfolding. I'm curious, what were the reactions after that have you received threats? And what were the reactions to the film once it started screening in Croatia, but also regionally?
Well, I did not receive any threats, so yeah. But actually, the film got some attacks. The most attacks this film got was before anyone has seen it. For the reason that and these attacks came from extreme right-wing newspapers, which are still marginal in Croatia, or some portals. But I think what played in favor of this film was this lack that we had first world premiere we did not have in Croatia. We had it on a Swiss film festival, and we immediately got the recognition. We got an award, and then we went further to win this Doc Alliance award, which is an important international award, and then we went even further and won Sarajevo, and Sarajevo for the region is a festival with the most glamour. So all the newspapers covered this festival, and
the red carpet.
Red carpet, and because this year Angelina Jolie was not there, but everybody hoped for someone, you know. So when we got the award on Sarajevo, suddenly I was giving interviews for these magazines that deal with gossips, and you know, and the next thing, story about film was at every hairdresser in Croatia, you know, and then you're mainstream when you get there, and it's very hard then to disqualify you, you know, so because you're someone who won some important award, you know. So. But also, if I would be, some would say cynical, I would say maybe realistical. Unfortunately, documentary film is not that influential in Croatia. So this film was very well received in cinemas. It was like the most viewed Croatian documentary in years, and that means that we had box office of 3,000 people, which is actually very small number, you know, even for Croatia, it's a small number because people don't watch documentaries in cinema. And to get bigger reach, we should get to the national television, and it's completely impossible to get with this film to national television. But now I can say that we made a deal with HBO for Southern Europe, so it will be shown on HBO, and then we will see what will happen next year.
But HBO is obviously kind of restricted access; only those who pay can see it, right?
Yeah, but it's still bigger reach than and then we also go to Al Jazeera next. So somehow, you know, we go from the outside in.
I have a small follow-up, just out of curiosity. This time when I was watching, I also recognized the friend in the audience this time because it was on a big screen. I was like, I know this person. Someone who's from Rijeka, actually. So, but no, I thought about, because you interviewed one of the actors, one from eastern part of Croatia, who sort of has this inner conflict, saying like, well, you know, I'm from the embattled region, and you know, and here you were telling us to do this, and yes, I want to do it, but I'm struggling with this. I'm wondering, did you also interview other actors throughout this process? And what made you decide maybe to keep them in or not keep them? Obviously, in this case, we just have one actor. Can you speak about that a little bit?
I interviewed them all of them. But we used only 3 interviews, obviously with Nina. And then we used the interview with 2 actors that are roughly the same age, but one of them was Croat, who was from the eastern of Croatia, and whose village was attacked by Serbian army, and who had to, and he comes obviously as it goes. His family is quite radical today because they suffered a lot, which is not which makes it understandable, if not justifiable, but you can understand where he comes from. And the other is Nikola, who is Serb, who lived in Zagreb during the war. So it's like I took the extremes because in that way I felt that I'm surrounding the whole Croatia when I take the 2 extremes. So basically everything that's inside, you know, is between these 2 extremes. So, and the other actors were somewhere inside, so they were not necessary, you know.
Can you tell us about the woman who we hear from first? We start with her testimonial, which is very emotional, and then later at the end she's sitting in the audience.
Well, there is a story connected to her, but first, if this was a fiction, then we would just write face someone from the audience, you know. So her only role was to for me, in a film, she had 2 roles. First, to set up the scene in the beginning, to set up the tone, and second, I never, as you have seen, one of the first decisions that I made in this film was, as a director, was that I'm not going to show the stage, because for me, film and theater are, although very similar, arts are in their essence opposites. And when you film the theater, you're killing it basically, because you're taking it of something that is maybe the most important for me in the theater, and that's the fact that you're watching the live performance, that you're in a room with performers at the moment when they're creating, and when you watch the film, it's all done sometimes in the past. So I hate watching theater on TV or on film. So I decided immediately I'm not going to turn my camera to the stage. I will always turn camera away in a way. I will direct it off beat. So when someone is acting, that I will film reactions, and then when somebody stops acting, when somebody is not supposed to be looked at, then we turn camera to that person, and that made sense in a several. Also, when I think now about it, it makes sense because the whole plot of this film is Nina's fear of reaction. So it makes sense that we watch for the reaction all the time. And when during the performances of this theater play, we also did the same system. We hid some cameras on a stage that filmed the audience. And what plays very well for me is the fact that during the theater play, audience is in dark, so you cannot see their faces, which makes it more scary. What are they thinking? But we also need one face in the audience to get emotional response, and that's why we chose to have one person that we will put light. But how we came to her? Well, actually, there was another version of this film before this one, which is completely the same in everything except that the face in the audience and the girl in the beginning was the different girl. And this other girl I met in 2014 because at the same time, while I was filming this in a theater, I was doing something else, and I met one young girl at the time. She was 19, and we talked, and I talked to her about what I'm doing also, and she said, "Okay, I have a story that you must hear, and I want you to film me for this film." And she told me this story. So this other girl, was born also in 1995 after the war has ended, and she never met her biological father, and her biological mother left her after 2 days in a home for children without parents, and she was never adopted. She was raised in the institutions, and when she was at the age of 3 or 4, she came to the institution that's called SOS Village, and it works like that. This is a village for the children without parents, and in this village, in every house lives 5 or 6 children and one social worker who acts as a mother to these children, and kids call her mother. And this girl I'm talking about was one of these kids, and she was raised as a Croat, and she was her national identity was Croat because that's how they were raised in this surrogate family, and she was Catholic, and she liked her favorite singer was Thompson. Maybe some of you know. He's a very extreme right-wing singer in Croatia, and that's how she was. And she went to local school, and when she was at the age of 12, boys in her class has found out the name of her biological mother, the one that left her at birth. And that name was Serbian. And then this boy started bullying her so badly that she's Serb, that she's Chetnik, that she got a nervous breakdown because she did not even know what does that mean. It was out of her system. She didn't understand what's happening, where suddenly. And then fast forward to this 7 years later, she told me that story, and which I found perfect for my film because it's beyond absurd. And I told her, okay, great, I will start film with this story, but I want you to come with me to the performance, and I will film you in the audience as well. And so we did it, and it was exactly the same like this. You see her face reacting to Nina, and then again, fast forward a couple of years later, we finished the first cut of the film, and I invited her to see it, and she watched the film, and she says, perfect, that's great film, now cut me out of it. And I say, okay, bye, what's wrong? No, I don't want to be part of that film. Nothing is wrong with your film, but I just got my first job. And my boss, I think he's a right-wing, And it might be that if he sees me in that film, that he will fire me from my job. And I asked her, okay, are you positive about that? Are you sure that that will happen? And she said, no, I'm not sure, but I'm not going to risk it because it's possible. And I think this story says a lot about situation in Croatia today. So there is a lot of, nobody is sure what could happen, you know, but people are very cautious. This is the mildest word. I'm not so fluent in English, so I cannot find the right word, but they're really careful because history is not that far ago, and the horrible things happen. Yeah.
And no, and we've been witness also just recently, and I know in February, was it that some water polo players from Serbia who were on the Croatian coast, they were attacked in the middle of the day, terrible incident. Not that these things happen all the time, but they seem to happen more frequently lately. And not only in Croatia, but seems to regionally, when we have this sort of, and outside too, hate crimes are kind of rising. And what's interesting to me here that now we have these films that speak about the 90s with a new tone, with the urgency and importance. In Serbia also recently we had the documentary Depth 2, which confronts directly state-sponsored violence in Kosovo. Why do you think is film ready now? And the climate is not such. It's very difficult to work in this kind of a climate. Could Srbenka or a film like Srbenka be possible now? What do you think about this present situation for filmmakers specifically?
Well, I don't know, because when I have finished this film, people told me, okay, you will never get money in Croatia again for a film. And I got money for my new film. So it's not that simple. Situation is not that simple. And I wouldn't say that Croatia is not fascist country. It's not. But we have some fascist tendencies in Croatia, and as everywhere else, I would say. You know, and it's. But the battle is not lost. You know, in a way, it's not so. Situation is not that bad. But it is worse than it was in 2014, because when I started working on that film, I was thinking that we are on a constant uphill, you know, that it's getting better every year. And I thought, okay, now it's time to start talking about minorities. And then it's time to start talking maybe about Serbian casualties in Croatia, okay, about Serbian civilians that died in Croatia during the war, and for whom there was not a lot of empathy in the Croatian society, but which is of course horrible. But then the situation changed to the worse in the last 4 years. But for the reasons that we can all talk about. In Croatia is the fact that we got right-wing politicians right now in president of Croatia is maybe some of you know her as a nice blonde lady who is very happy about Croatian football victories, you know. But for me, she's the one who opened this Pandora's box with when she came in power in Croatia. And now we have elections coming up, and she's again leading the polls, and you know, it's quite scary.
It really is part of a general trend and a worrying trend around the world, including this country. Obviously, this is what this phrase "global moment" used in Variety really resonated. But you also said in that piece, and I quote, "We thought it would be a very local film, but it's not. People recognize that it's not only about Serbs and Croats. This is a film about everybody who is different." Do you want to tell us more about that with respect to showing film in other contexts where you didn't expect it to resonate and it somehow did?
Well, I noticed something. I said in the beginning that I basically finished filming in 2014 and I started editing in 2017. And what I was doing in the meantime was also researching, because this film came so fast that I did not have time to do proper research. I wanted to see if Nina's story is basically an excess, something that is typical, or something that is just her story. And so, together with a colleague who is journalist, we talked to a lot of young Serbs from Croatia, and I heard different experiences. But something stuck to me really, because a couple of them said about their national coming out. That's the words they used. You know, when did they tell their, not parents obviously, but their friends or girlfriend or boyfriend or colleague
outed themselves.
Yeah, when they outed. So in a way, you know, it is a very similar feeling to anyone who is a minority, and the minority that's considered not good by a majority. You know.
Should we open it up to the audience? We have time for a few questions.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great film, Nebojša. So I wanted to ask what your next project is, because I'm wondering what's going to happen to Nina, or at least Ninas in plural, right? One thing that I noticed, both in how you speak about the project, but also in the film, is how the Serbian subject in Croatia, for it to be recognized as a victim, it has to be a child, right? So there has to be, all these categories have to be met for a Serbian victimhood to kind of emerge. And I wouldn't say this is the case just in Croatia, but in Croatia in particular, I'd say. And I thought, watching the film, what if you actually made a film about an assertive Nina in Croatia that says, yes, I am a Serb and I won't be silenced or shamed about it, right? I mean, maybe this generation hasn't emerged yet, right? So yes, I wanted to know what your next project is about and if it relates to this project at all. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Why do you think that it's in particular in Croatia? You know?
Well, unlike you, I do think that Croatia is a fascist country, because in the post-Yugoslav context, no other country has named their airport after the former war criminal, or have presidents that are in total denial of the war crimes, aligned with various far-right groups. I don't know that I agree with you entirely that the far right in Croatia is marginal. I think it's gone mainstream, and I'm not sure that that's the case in any other post-Yugoslav space. I mean, that would be the case in Bulgaria, but Bulgaria is not part of the post-Yugoslav region. That's my 5 cents.
Yeah. Okay, I don't agree, obviously. Yeah, because I can think about some other Balkan countries which are pretty similar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But my next project is not connected to Serbs or Croats, or it's quite early in a development, so I'm not even sure if it's going to be a film. But it deals with domestic violence, and I think it's quite important topic right now in Croatia as well, because of very conservative forces that are pushing, restricting some, especially women's rights, and it's not passing yet, but you know it's the next threat in Croatia. So that is the topic, and yeah, that's it.
Do we have other questions in the audience?
Great film, thank you so much. I really enjoyed watching it. I'm just curious if you plan to try and distribute it outside of Europe and America, for example, in Japan. The experience of Koreans in Japan has been very much like the experience of Nina or Serbs in Croatia.
Yeah, well, to tell you the truth, the distributors did not believe in this film. So we had trouble finding a European distributor even, and I think some of them are quite sorry now that they passed on us, because now we are distributing it ourselves, and it's quite well for us. And for America, I have no idea how. I was contacted by somebody from America who about distribution of the film, but they asked us, the production, to pay them money to distribute the film. And for me, it's like a wrong flow of money if we are paying someone to sell our film. You know, I don't understand that. So I don't understand maybe this country very well.
We all struggle.
Join the
sometime.
club. Other questions?
If no one has a question, I have a question. There's one. Okay.
Thank you. I thought it was really interesting that you brought up depth too, because visually I found the two films had a lot of similarities, and I was wondering if the decision that went behind, particularly when you were interviewing the actors, not showing their faces whatsoever, and in the first interview scene as well, when she's in some of her most emotional states, we're not looking at her face, and I'm wondering what the decision behind that artistic choice was.
Yeah, well, when I recorded, that's the right word, I did not film these interviews. This was only recorded with only the sound was recorded, and for a couple of reasons. First, I wanted Nina especially to feel as comfortable as possible. So I was conducting this interview in a theater in between two rehearsals on an empty theater stage in almost complete darkness because there is no light in a room. So I just put a little microphone on her and asked her a question, and she could barely see me. And I think it helped a lot her in feeling that she can speak openly. So and I think you can hear it. It's like listening to her thoughts. It's not like listening to the interview. And also, I did not. For me, I find it like as a director, filming interviews with showing people on a stage on a screen as they talk. For me, it's quite a boring decision, you know, like easy way out, and it works a lot of the times. But I try to make it a little bit differently, you know. So.
There's a question here.
Thank you so much for this beautiful film. I really enjoyed. I'm still emotional, you know. I just wanted to ask you about the performance. How long did it run, and how did the audience react to it? Can you tell us a little bit about it? And also, thank you for your next movie. I mean, the theme that you said you're interested in is amazing, and I thank you for that in advance.
Thank you. Well, performances. There were not so many performances of this play because of simple reasons that I said before. That these actors, all of them were employed in some other theaters during working. So they had the base of the theater play was in Rijeka, but most of them came from Zagreb, so they had to take days off from their regular jobs to come to play it. So it played in, for example, in Zagreb, I think there were only 2 performances, and you said that you recognized some people in a audience, but basically the people who saw the play were mostly people from the scene, you know, from either theater professionals or film professionals, you know. So
she's academic workers.
Yeah, or so it's like it did not have a wide audience to see it, unfortunately. You know, so it played for a couple of years, but only a few performances per year, and it traveled a little bit around theater festivals. So, but very narrow audience. So, but the reactions were very good, except the media, mainstream media, who attacked. But you can see part of that in the film as well. Who had many people. Actually, Oliver Frljić right now is one of the most hated persons in Croatia. You know, it's amazing that you can. I think for a theater director to get such status, I think it's a great success. I must say, because Yeah, actually, you can hear. You know, one day my wife and me were in a park with a kid, and there was 6 guys with beer sitting on and drinking beer and discussing about Oliver Frljić. You know, which like a football supporters. You know, so it's like amazing. Yeah, but that means also that his plays are sometimes bashed by critics without even seeing them. You know.
Can I just quickly say, brings me to something that you said earlier, which is that you don't think, and I'm sorry, I'm just paraphrasing what you said, that documentary film can change much, and you mentioned 3,000 or 3,500 people seeing the film in Croatia, but I would connect it to what you just said about the play. Maybe there weren't that many performances, but it still circulates within the discourse, and I would venture to, it's the case with your film as well. People are talking about it, and not just academics, and not just people connected to film industry. So even if not that many have seen it, it's still somehow touched on something that's become part of a broader discourse, something that was largely missing in Croatian society in particular. So I just wanted to amend your modest opinion that your film might not have changed anything.
Yeah, but also I'm quite aware for Oliver Frljić. I admire him a lot, but he does one thing that I cannot do. If his weapon would only be his theater plays, that he would not achieve almost anything, you know. But he is extremely active on various fronts, and he writes a lot for different newspapers. He gives a lot of public performances, you know. So he's completely dedicated to his, and he suffers a lot privately because of that, you know. And this is what is necessary to change the public opinion, you know. I'm not ready to give that.
I think that's all the time we have, because there's another presentation here. Thank you all for being here, and thank you again, Nebojša.
Thank you, Ron.